2 black men in $1 million Rolls-Royce? You really expect me to believe this car belongs to you? Captain Travis Harlan sneered as he ripped the registration from Jordan Cross's hand and threw it into a muddy puddle. Then he raised his baton. Crack! The Rolls-Royce windshield shattered. Julian Cross stepped forward. You verified the registration. Stop destroying our property. Harlan laughed. People like you buy one expensive car and suddenly think cops should bow when you arrive. He struck the hood again. Take away the suits and that fancy car, and nobody here would believe either of you belongs anywhere near this kind of money. Jordan's jaw tightened. An officer ripped a concealed electronic module from beneath the dashboard. Jordan immediately moved forward. Don't touch that. Harlan snatched the device and crushed it beneath his boot. You don't give orders here. Jordan stared at the shattered components. You have no idea what you just destroyed. Harlan leaned closer. Then tell me who you think you are. Julian quietly checked his watch. Suddenly, headlights flooded the street. 1 black SUV appeared. Then 5. Then 12. Jordan looked directly at Harlan. You're about to find out. Stay with this story. Because Harlan had just made a mistake that would expose far more than a destroyed $1.5 million Rolls-Royce. Comment your city and local time below, and subscribe if you believe dignity should never depend on someone's title. 3 hours earlier, the Rolls-Royce moved quietly along the tree-lined roads outside Belridge, Virginia. Jordan Cross drove with one hand resting lightly on the wheel. Beside him sat his identical twin brother, Julian. Both men were 45. Both wore simple dark jackets over white shirts, and neither looked like someone expecting trouble. They had spent the morning at Oak Haven Memorial Cemetery, where their father, Samuel Cross, had been buried 11 years earlier. Every August, the brothers returned together. No assistant, no cameras, no ceremonies, just 2 sons standing before their father's grave. Samuel Cross had spent 34 years repairing city buses. His hands had always smelled faintly of machine oil, even on Sundays. But Julian remembered his words better than anything else. Power doesn't make a man important, Samuel had once told them. It only reveals what kind of man he already was. Jordan glanced toward his brother. You were quiet back there. Julian watched the passing trees. I was thinking about Dad. Me too. A small smile crossed Jordan's face. He would hate this car. Julian finally laughed. He'd ask why anyone needs an umbrella inside the door. Jordan smiled. For several seconds, they were simply brothers again. Then Jordan checked the rearview mirror. A police cruiser had appeared behind them. Its lights flashed. Jordan's smile disappeared. He calmly pulled onto the shoulder. The cruiser stopped behind the Rolls-Royce. A second patrol vehicle arrived less than a minute later. Julian noticed. That was fast. Jordan said nothing. Captain Travis Harlan stepped from the first cruiser. Broad-shouldered, gray beginning to show at his temples, Harlan walked toward the Rolls-Royce with the confidence of a man accustomed to seeing people become nervous when he approached. He stopped beside Jordan's window. License. Jordan handed it over. Harlan looked at the card, then at Jordan, then at Julian. His eyes moved slowly across the leather interior. Registration. Jordan handed him that too. Harlan studied the document. His expression changed slightly. This says the vehicle is registered to you. That's because it is. Harlan gave a humorless laugh. You expect me to believe that? Jordan looked directly at him. The registration is in your hand. Harlan leaned closer. Where did you get the car? I bought it. With what? Julian turned toward him. Captain, is there a reason you're asking about my brother's finances? Harlan's eyes narrowed. Jordan noticed the nameplate. Travis Harlan. Something flickered behind Jordan's eyes. Julian saw it. Neither brother said anything. Harlan stepped backward. Both of you out of the vehicle. Jordan remained seated. Why? Because I told you. That isn't a legal reason. Harlan's jaw tightened. Officer Rachel Monroe had approached from the second cruiser. She looked younger than Harlan, perhaps early 30s. Her body camera was active. Captain, she said carefully, dispatch can verify the registration. Harlan ignored her. Jordan opened his door slowly and stepped out. Julian followed. A passing sedan slowed. Then another. A few pedestrians near a coffee shop across the street began watching. Harlan held up Jordan's registration. Let me understand this. 2 black men drive through Belridge in a car worth more than most houses, and I'm supposed to ask no questions? Jordan's expression hardened. You're supposed to verify the documents. Harlan stared at him. Then he dropped the registration onto the wet pavement. Jordan looked down at it. Rachel's expression changed. Captain, stay out of this, Monroe. Jordan bent down and picked up the document. Rainwater had already soaked one corner. He carefully wiped it against his sleeve. Harlan watched him. Maybe the paperwork is good. Maybe it isn't. Expensive cars get moved with clean documents all the time. Julian spoke quietly. Then run the VIN. Harlan turned toward him. I know how to do my job. Then do it. The words were calm. That seemed to anger Harlan more. He stepped close enough that only inches separated them. You think because you can afford a nice jacket and an expensive car, you get to tell me what to do? Julian did not move. No. I think the law tells you what to do. Rachel lowered her eyes for a moment. Harlan's face hardened. He walked around the Rolls-Royce, examining it as though searching for something that would justify what he had already decided. Jordan watched every movement. Then Harlan spoke into his radio. Possible stolen luxury vehicle. 2 suspicious occupants. Rachel looked at him sharply. Captain, we haven't established that. Harlan covered his radio microphone. Officer Monroe, one more interruption, and you can finish your shift behind a desk. Rachel went silent, but her body camera continued recording. Jordan looked toward Julian. That silent exchange passed between them again. Something was wrong here. Harlan returned to Jordan. Keys. No. Harlan blinked. Jordan continued. You have my license. You have the registration. Verify both. You do not have permission to search the vehicle. Harlan smiled slowly. Permission? He turned toward the other officers. You hear that? One of them chuckled. Harlan looked back at Jordan. You're standing on my road, in my city, telling me what I have permission to do. Jordan's voice became colder. It isn't your road. For the first time, Harlan's smile vanished completely. Julian watched his brother. He knew that tone. Jordan was no longer merely enduring the encounter. He was studying it. Harlan reached for the door handle. Jordan stepped between him and the Rolls-Royce. Captain. Harlan stopped. Move. Verify the registration. For several seconds, neither man moved. Then Harlan placed one hand against Jordan's chest and shoved him backward. Rachel took an instinctive step forward. Jordan caught his balance. He did not retaliate. He simply stared at Harlan. And suddenly Julian understood why his brother had become so focused. He remembered the name too. Harlan, a name Jordan had mentioned once. Months earlier, during a conversation he had immediately changed when Julian entered the room. Julian slowly turned toward his brother. Jordan met his eyes. His voice was barely above a whisper. It's him. Harlan grabbed the Rolls-Royce door handle and pulled it open. Captain Travis Harlan pulled open the Rolls-Royce door and leaned inside. Jordan Cross immediately stepped forward. I did not consent to a search. Harlan glanced over his shoulder. I don't remember asking. He opened the center console and began removing its contents. Julian remained beside the car, watching everything. Jordan did the same, not with anger, with precision. He memorized Harlan's words, the officers surrounding them, the position of the vehicles, even the time displayed on the dashboard. Rachel Monroe noticed. Captain, she said, the registration came back valid. Harlan stopped. Jordan looked at her. Rachel continued cautiously. Registered owner is Jordan Cross. VIN matches. No stolen vehicle report. For one brief moment, silence settled over the roadside. Jordan held out his hand. Then we're finished. Harlan slowly straightened. No. Rachel stared at him. Captain? A clean registration doesn't explain everything. Jordan's eyes narrowed. What exactly needs explaining? Harlan pointed toward the Rolls-Royce. This. Julian almost looked amused. You're investigating us because the car is expensive? I'm investigating because something doesn't feel right. Jordan's voice sharpened. Suspicion requires facts. Harlan stepped closer. And arrogance usually means someone has something to hide. He turned back toward the vehicle. Jordan blocked him. Do you have probable cause? Harlan shoved past him. This time, Rachel's body camera captured everything. Harlan searched the rear compartment. He moved a jacket, opened a storage compartment. Then he noticed a black leather case secured beneath the rear seat. His expression changed. Well, well. Jordan immediately turned. Leave that where it is. Harlan pulled the case free. It was compact, reinforced, and protected by an electronic lock. Harlan held it up. What's inside? Material unrelated to this stop. Open it. No. Harlan smiled. That answer usually means I should be interested. It means you don't have authority to open it. Harlan looked toward the officers. You hearing this? Nobody answered. Across the street, several pedestrians now had their phones raised. Harlan noticed them. His irritation deepened. He turned back toward Jordan. Unlock it. Jordan remained still. No. Harlan grabbed Jordan's phone from the roof of the car. Jordan moved instantly. Give me my phone. Harlan slipped it into his own pocket. You'll get it back when I decide you're cooperating. Rachel stepped forward. Captain, his registration is valid. Taking his phone, Harlan spun around. Turn your camera off. Rachel froze. Sid? You heard me. Her hand moved toward the body camera. The small indicator went dark. Harlan nodded. Good. But as he turned away, Rachel pressed the control again beneath the edge of her jacket. A tiny light returned. Jordan saw it. He said nothing. Harlan placed the locked case on the hood. Last chance. Jordan looked directly at him. You should think carefully about what you do next. Harlan laughed. There it is. What? That little threat. It wasn't a threat. Sounded like one. Julian stepped forward. My brother is telling you to follow the law. Harlan pointed at him. And you need to learn when to stay quiet. Then he ordered another officer to bring tools from the cruiser. The crowd reacted immediately. You can't just break into his property. His papers checked out. Harlan turned toward them. Back up unless you want to become part of this investigation. The crowd retreated slightly. Jordan watched the officer return with a small pry tool. Captain Harlan. Harlan paused. Jordan's voice was controlled. Do not open that case. Why? Because its contents are protected. By who? Jordan said nothing. Harlan stepped closer. Who are you? Jordan stared at him. Right now? A citizen whose rights you're ignoring. Something about the answer enraged Harlan. He seized Jordan's wrist. Rachel moved forward. Captain! Harlan twisted Jordan's arm behind his back. Jordan did not resist. Click. The first handcuff closed. Julian took a step forward. Two officers immediately moved between them. Don't, Jordan told his brother. Harlan locked the second cuff. You wanted to lecture me about authority? He pushed Jordan against the Rolls-Royce. Now you can do it in cuffs. Jordan slowly straightened. His face remained calm. That calmness unsettled Harlan. So Harlan returned to the car. He searched deeper. Minutes later, an officer called from the front passenger compartment. Captain, you need to see this. He had removed a narrow panel beneath the dashboard. Behind it sat a compact electronic module with several secured connections. Harlan stared at it. What the hell is that? Jordan's expression changed for the first time. Leave it alone. Harlan looked back. There was satisfaction in his eyes now. So we finally found something you care about. It has nothing to do with your traffic stop. Harlan reached toward the module. Jordan stepped forward despite the cuffs. Do not touch that equipment. Harlan smiled. Why? Is it recording something? Jordan looked toward Rachel's hidden camera, then back at Harlan. His answer was quiet. Captain, that device is documenting more than you realize. Harlan's smile slowly faded, and for the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. For several seconds, Captain Travis Harlan simply stared at Jordan Cross. The rain continued falling around them, tapping against the damaged Rolls-Royce while traffic crawled past the growing crowd. What exactly is that thing documenting? Harlan demanded. Jordan stood with his wrists cuffed behind his back. You were warned not to touch it. That wasn't my question. And I'm not required to answer. Harlan's uncertainty immediately hardened into anger. He turned toward the electronic module. Pull it out. Officer Rachel Monroe stepped forward. Captain, we should stop. Harlan looked at her. Rachel swallowed but continued. The registration is valid. The VIN is clean. We haven't found stolen property, weapons, narcotics, or anything connecting these men to a crime. Harlan pointed toward the concealed equipment. You don't find that suspicious? Suspicious isn't automatically illegal. Harlan stared at her. Then another patrol cruiser arrived. A heavyset man in his early 50s stepped out. Sergeant Dean Mercer. Jordan recognized the name immediately. Another name from the investigation. Mercer approached Harlan. What happened? Harlan pointed toward Jordan and Julian. Possible stolen vehicle turned into something bigger. Rachel interrupted. The vehicle was confirmed legally registered. Mercer ignored her. His attention moved toward the exposed dashboard, then toward the black case resting on the hood. What's inside? They won't tell me. Mercer studied Jordan. Then make them. Julian stepped forward. My brother is already handcuffed without a legitimate charge. Mercer looked Julian up and down. You want matching bracelets? Julian remained expressionless. Jordan watched Mercer instead. The two men exchanged a brief glance. Mercer did not recognize him. That mattered. Harlan ordered an officer to remove the electronic module. Jordan's voice became sharper. Captain, I strongly advise against that. Harlan turned. You keep advising me like you're somebody important. Jordan said nothing. Harlan smiled. That's what I thought. The officer reached beneath the dashboard. Rachel moved closer. Captain, if that equipment belongs to another agency or a private security company, damaging it could create serious problems. Harlan laughed. You worried these two are going to sue us? I'm worried we don't know what we're dealing with. That sentence irritated Mercer. He stepped toward Rachel. You're dealing with two suspects who refuse to cooperate. They aren't suspects until we have a suspected crime. Mercer's expression darkened. Harlan moved between them. Monroe enough. Rachel looked at him. Sir, give me your body camera. Her face changed. What? You heard me. Harlan extended his hand. Rachel hesitated. That hesitation told Jordan everything. Harlan stepped closer. You want to spend the next 6 months directing traffic? Rachel slowly removed the camera. Before handing it over, her thumb pressed against its side. Jordan noticed the movement. So did Julian. Harlan did not. He took the camera and tossed it onto the passenger seat of his cruiser. Now maybe we can work without someone questioning every decision. Rachel remained silent, but the anger in her eyes was unmistakable. Harlan returned to the Rolls-Royce. The officer pulled at the electronic module. A connector snapped. Jordan flinched. Stop. Harlan smiled. Finally, he had found something that broke Jordan's composure. What happened to all that confidence? That equipment isn't yours to destroy. It's inside a vehicle I'm investigating. A vehicle you already verified is legal. Harlan stepped closer. I decide when my investigation ends. No, Jordan said. The law does. Harlan's face tightened. He grabbed Jordan by the shoulder and shoved him against the car. Julian immediately moved forward. Mercer blocked him. Take another step. Julian stopped. His voice remained calm. Captain Harlan, state the charge against my brother. Harlan looked toward him. Obstruction. Obstruction of what? My investigation. Into what crime? Silence. Several people in the crowd murmured. Someone shouted, Answer him! Harlan turned toward the spectators. Everybody back. Nobody moved far. Too many phones were recording now. Harlan looked increasingly trapped. Mercer leaned toward him. We need control of this scene. Harlan nodded. Then he pointed at the Rolls-Royce. Search everything. Rachel stared at him. Captain, don't. Harlan ignored her. Officers opened compartments, removed panels, pulled luggage onto the wet pavement, and searched beneath the seats. Jordan watched carefully. Julian watched Harlan. Then an officer tried forcing open the locked case. The tool slipped. A deep scratch appeared across the leather. Jordan exhaled slowly. Mercer noticed. That case matters to you. Jordan remained silent. Mercer smiled. Open it and maybe this gets easier. No. Mercer reached for a heavier tool. Julian spoke. You should listen to him. Mercer laughed. Why? Who are you supposed to be? Julian looked at him. Someone giving you an opportunity you won't get twice. Mercer's smile disappeared. Harlan walked over. Was that a threat? No. Julian glanced at the damaged car. It was courtesy. Harlan stared at him, then suddenly grabbed the pry tool. He drove it against the case lock. The metal casing cracked. Rachel whispered, Jesus. Inside were several sealed folders and a compact encrypted drive. No cash. No drugs. No weapon. Harlan's triumph faded. Mercer picked up one folder. Most of its markings meant nothing to him, but one coded identifier clearly meant something. His face lost color. Jordan saw it. So did Rachel. Mercer quickly lowered the document. Harlan. What? Mercer pulled him several feet away. We need to talk. Harlan resisted. About what? Mercer lowered his voice. Jordan could not hear everything, but he heard enough. Federal. Harlan looked back at the twins. For the first time, genuine fear appeared behind his anger. Jordan quietly turned toward Julian. If they damaged the primary unit, the operation could be compromised. Harlan caught only the final words. Operation? Jordan realized the mistake. Harlan walked back toward him. What operation? Jordan remained silent. Harlan's fear transformed into desperation. He pointed toward the Rolls-Royce. Take the dashboard apart. Rachel stepped between him and the car. No. Everyone froze. Harlan stared at her. Move, officer. Rachel held her ground. You know this stop has gone too far. Harlan stepped closer. Move. Rachel slowly did. Harlan turned to the officers. Destroy whatever is hiding behind that panel. Julian looked at Jordan. Jordan's expression had changed. Not because of the car, not because of the cuffs, because Harlan was about to cross a line from which there would be no return. Captain Travis Harlan stood beside the Rolls-Royce, staring at the exposed dashboard as if destroying it could erase every mistake he had already made. Take it apart. The officer hesitated. Captain, now. A tool disappeared behind the panel. Plastic cracked. Jordan Cross closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them again, his anger was gone. That frightened Rachel Monroe more than shouting would have. Jordan was watching, remembering. Julian Cross remained several feet away, surrounded by officers. Captain, Julian said, you still have time to stop. Harlan turned sharply. Stop acting like you know something I don't. Julian looked toward the broken dashboard. I'm certain I do. Harlan walked to his cruiser and grabbed the radio. Dispatch? Run both names again? Jordan Cross and Julian Cross, full database. Static answered. Then a dispatcher spoke. Jordan Cross returns valid, no warrants. And Julian, a pause. Keyboard clicks followed. Then silence. Dispatch? Captain, I'm getting a restricted access response. Harlan frowned. What does that mean? I don't know. The system won't display the record. Run it again. I already did. Harlan looked toward Julian. Julian stood calmly in the rain. Override it. I don't have authorization. Harlan slammed the radio against the cruiser door. Rachel saw the fear return. Mercer approached. We should move them. Harlan lowered his voice. Not until I know who they are. Jordan heard him. You had that opportunity when you checked our identification. Harlan spun around. Shut up. Jordan almost smiled. Harlan walked back toward the car. Ripped the module out. The officer pulled harder. A cable snapped. A section of the dashboard broke loose and fell onto the pavement. The crowd gasped. A woman shouted, "That's destruction of property!" Another voice answered, "We're recording everything." Harlan turned. "Put those phones away." Nobody obeyed. Instead, more phones rose. Harlan pointed at the crowd. Anyone interfering gets detained. An elderly black man near the front stepped forward. He wore a faded green jacket and leaned on a wooden cane. "You said that to my son." Harlan stared at him. "What?" 2 years ago. The man's voice shook, but he continued. "You stopped Marcus on Westfield Avenue, took his truck because you said you suspected drug money." Harlan's expression changed. "He was never charged," the man continued. "We never got the truck back." Mercer stepped forward. "Sir, leave." The man remained. "My son lost his landscaping business because of you." Jordan turned toward him. "What was your son's name?" Harlan immediately shouted, "Don't answer him." Everyone went silent. Jordan looked at Harlan. That reaction mattered. The elderly man answered anyway. "Marcus Reed." Jordan repeated it quietly. "Marcus Reed." Harlan grabbed Jordan's shoulder. "You're not interviewing anybody." Jordan looked down at Harlan's hand, then back at his face. "I asked a question. You're in custody." "For what?" Harlan said nothing. Jordan continued. "You've changed your justification 3 times. Stolen vehicle, money laundering, obstruction. Which one are you putting in the report?" Rachel looked toward Harlan. So did several officers. Harlan released Jordan. "You think you're clever?" "No." Jordan's voice was quiet. "I think you're making a record." Rachel understood immediately. Her body cam. The phones. Dispatch. Witnesses. Everything Harlan said was becoming evidence. Mercer understood too. He pulled Harlan aside. "We need to shut this down." Harlan shook his head. "If we release them now, they walk away with everything." "With what?" Harlan glanced toward the encrypted drive. "That." Mercer's face tightened. Rachel stepped backward unnoticed. Her phone remained inside her pocket. Minutes earlier, before surrendering her body camera, she had triggered an automatic upload to private evidence storage. She checked the screen beneath her jacket. Upload complete. Rachel locked the phone. Harlan never saw it. An officer emerged from the Rolls-Royce holding a compact black storage unit. "Captain." Jordan's expression hardened. The officer handed it to Harlan. "What is this?" Jordan remained silent. Harlan turned it over. No ordinary manufacturer information appeared on the casing, only a serial number. "Open it." Jordan finally spoke. "You should preserve it exactly as you found it." Harlan laughed. "Now you're worried about evidence procedure?" "Yes." The answer came so quickly that Harlan stopped laughing. Jordan stepped closer until Mercer blocked him. "If you believe that device is evidence, document where it was recovered, place it in a proper evidence container, and establish chain of custody." Harlan stared at him. "You sound like a lawyer." Jordan said nothing. "Orakop." Still nothing. Harlan lifted the device. "What happens if I break it?" Jordan's eyes became cold. "You make things much worse for yourself." Harlan threw the storage unit onto the hood, then struck it with the metal tool. Crack. Rachel flinched. Jordan did not. Harlan struck it again. "Still calm?" Jordan stared at the damaged unit. "Yes." That answer infuriated him. Harlan swept the device from the hood. It landed in a puddle. "Search the rest." Officers began removing sections of the Rolls-Royce interior. Leather panels were pulled loose. A rear compartment was emptied onto the road. The destruction had stopped resembling a search. It looked like punishment. Julian watched silently. Then the elderly man with the cane spoke again. "He did this to others." Jordan turned toward him. "How many?" "At least 6 families I know." Harlan stormed toward the man. Julian stepped directly into his path. Harlan stopped. "Move." Julian did not. "You've intimidated him enough. You're going to tell me how to handle my city?" Julian's expression remained calm. This city doesn't belong to you. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Harlan's radio crackled. Captain, dispatch. He grabbed it. What? We tried Julian Cross through the secondary system. And? Another pause. We've been instructed not to continue the query. Harlan's face drained. By whom? I wasn't given that information. Julian looked at Jordan. Jordan gave the smallest nod. Then something vibrated against his wrist. Harlan had missed the slim watch beneath Jordan's cuff. Jordan rotated his hand enough to see the message. Primary targets moving. Maintain cover. His eyes lifted toward Julian. Julian understood. Harlan walked toward them. Who the hell are you? Jordan lowered his wrist. Then he gave Harlan the same answer as before. Right now? He looked at the shattered Rolls-Royce. A citizen watching you decide exactly what kind of officer you want the evidence to remember. And somewhere beyond Belridge, the operation had begun moving. Captain Travis Harlan stared at Jordan Cross as the rainwater carried fragments of the damaged electronic unit toward the gutter. A citizen? Harlan repeated. You expect me to believe that? Jordan said nothing. What Harlan could not know was that Jordan had spent 7 months waiting for this investigation to reach exactly this stage. Not this traffic stop, not the destroyed Rolls-Royce, but the moment when frightened men inside Belridge began making mistakes. The investigation had started with 3 complaints about vehicles seized without criminal charges. Then investigators found 12, then 31. Cars, work trucks, cash, jewelry. Property disappeared into Belridge's seizure system before moving through shell companies, private auctions, and businesses connected to people who should never have benefited from police confiscations. One name appeared repeatedly around the edges. Travis Harlan. Never directly enough, never cleanly enough. Until today. Jordan looked toward the shattered dashboard. The Rolls-Royce had been equipped to document financial and electronic activity connected to one branch of the investigation. Harlan had unknowingly turned himself from a target of suspicion into a man creating evidence in public. Captain, Rachel Monroe's voice interrupted the silence. Harlan turned. What now? Rachel nodded toward Jordan. I need to speak with him. You need to stay away from him. It concerns the evidence. Harlan hesitated. Jordan watched Rachel carefully. Finally, Harlan pointed toward the cruiser. 30 seconds. Rachel approached Jordan. She kept her voice low. When we return to the station, that footage disappears. Jordan did not look at her. You're certain? I've seen it happen. How many times? Rachel swallowed. Enough. Jordan finally met her eyes. Did you preserve a copy? Rachel hesitated. That was answer enough. Protect it, Jordan whispered. Her eyes narrowed. Who are you? Jordan looked toward Harlan. Someone who needs you to keep doing the right thing for another hour. Rachel stared at him. Before she could answer, Harlan approached. That's enough. He grabbed Rachel's arm and pulled her backward. What did he say? Nothing relevant. Harlan's expression hardened. Give me your phone. Rachel froze. My personal phone? Now. No. The word surprised everyone. Harlan stepped closer. That wasn't a request. Rachel looked around. Several officers avoided her eyes. She understood exactly how alone she was. Then Jordan spoke. Officer Monroe. Rachel looked at him. You don't have to explain yourself to me. Something in his tone steadied her. She removed the phone. Before Harlan could take it, she locked the screen. Harlan snatched it away. You're done for tonight. Rachel's face tightened. Captain, you're suspended pending review. For what? Insubordination. Rachel stared at him. Then she slowly removed her badge from her belt. Harlan held out his hand. Rachel placed the badge into it. What he still did not know was that the recording had already left the device. The copy was safe. Across the road, Jordan noticed the elderly man, Mr. Reed, still watching. One witness had become dozens. Dozens had become cameras. The cover-up was already becoming harder. Mercer approached Harlan, carrying the damaged black case. We got it open. Harlan immediately turned. Inside were sealed documents and the encrypted drive they had seen earlier. Mercer removed the first folder. Most pages contained coded references, transaction numbers, and company identifiers. Harlan flipped impatiently through them. What is this? Jordan remained silent. Then Mercer found a page near the back. His expression changed. A small federal evidence control marking appeared beside a case identifier. Mercer stared at it, then at Jordan. Harlan. Harlan kept reading. What? Mercer grabbed his arm. Come here. They moved several yards away. Mercer lowered his voice. That marking is federal. Harlan glanced toward the twins. You sure? I've seen something like it in Joint Task Force paperwork. Harlan's face tightened. Maybe it's fake. Maybe. Mercer did not sound convinced. What if it isn't? For the first time, Harlan had no immediate answer. Jordan watched the conversation. Julian stepped closer to his brother. You expected this? Not exactly. You knew Harlan was involved. We suspected. Julian looked at the wrecked dashboard. And you let him continue. Jordan's eyes stayed on Harlan. We had financial links, complaints, patterns. We needed conduct connecting the people to the system. Julian understood. Harlan is giving you that. More than I ever expected. Harlan suddenly returned. He held the federal marked document inches from Jordan's face. Where did you get this? Jordan looked at it. I'm not discussing that with you. Harlan's fear returned as anger. You're going to tell me what this is. No. Harlan grabbed Jordan's jacket. Julian moved instantly. Mercer blocked him. Jordan remained calm. Harlan, let go. The use of his last name without rank made Harlan pause. Jordan continued. You're standing in front of witnesses holding material you removed from a locked container after being warned repeatedly not to access it. Harlan released him. Mercer whispered, We should stop. Harlan looked toward the crowd, then toward the damaged car, then at Rachel. He saw too many witnesses, too many mistakes, too much evidence. And instead of backing away, panic pushed him toward the worst decision available. Nobody leaves, Harlan said. Rachel stared at him. Harlan, what are you doing? He pointed toward the Rolls-Royce. We finish the search. Then we take both of them downtown. Jordan looked at Julian. Julian understood immediately. Harlan was no longer investigating anything. He was trying to control what survived. Then Mercer examined another page from the case. His hands began trembling. He moved beside Harlan. This time his whisper was barely audible. Jordan caught only the final sentence. We may have stopped the wrong men. Harlan slowly looked toward the twin brothers. And Jordan could see the exact moment fear became desperation. We may have stopped the wrong men. Sergeant Dean Mercer's warning hung between him and Captain Travis Harlan. Harlan stared at Jordan and Julian Cross. For one moment, common sense almost won. He could stop the search, preserve the evidence, call a supervisor, document everything honestly. Instead, Harlan looked at the crowd recording him, the broken dashboard, the opened federal documents, and Jordan standing in handcuffs. Stopping now meant admitting everything. His fear turned into desperation. Put both of them in patrol cars. Rachel Monroe stepped forward. Captain, no. Harlan turned. You're suspended. Leave. You have no legitimate charge. I said leave. Rachel looked toward Jordan. Jordan gave the smallest shake of his head. Not yet. Rachel understood. She backed away but remained near the crowd. Harlan pointed toward Julian. Cuff him. Two officers hesitated. Julian raised his hands slightly. Before you do that, Captain, state the charge. Harlan's jaw tight, interfering with an investigation. What investigation? The suspected criminal use of this vehicle. Jordan almost laughed. You already verified ownership. Harlan ignored him. Julian looked directly at the younger officer holding the cuffs. You're responsible for your own decisions. The officer froze. Harlan shouted, Do it! The young officer slowly lowered the cuffs. I'd like clarification too, Captain. Silence spread across the roadside. Harlan stared at him. You refusing an order? I'm asking what offense he committed. Harlan's face reddened. Mercer stepped in. I'll handle him. He grabbed Julian's arm. Julian did not resist. Before Mercer could apply the cuffs, Jordan spoke. Dean Mercer. Mercer stopped. Jordan had never been introduced to him. Harlan noticed. Mercer noticed too. How do you know my name? Jordan looked toward his nameplate. Mercer instinctively glanced down. Jordan said nothing more. But the damage was done. Mercer's uncertainty deepened. Harlan grabbed him. Forget it. Get them downtown. Then Rachel spoke from behind them. Where's the body cam footage going, Captain? Harlan turned. What? You took my camera. You're suspended. That doesn't answer the question. Harlan walked toward her. Rachel stood her ground. You planning to log it into evidence? Harlan stopped inches away. You're finished in this department. Rachel's voice trembled, but she did not retreat. If doing my job means I'm finished here, then maybe that tells everyone exactly what this department has become. Several people in the crowd applauded. Harlan's humiliation became rage. Get her out of here. Nobody moved. Rachel looked at him. I already saved the footage. Everything stopped. Harlan's face changed. What did you say? The recording is preserved. Jordan closed his eyes briefly. There it was. Harlan stepped toward Rachel. Where? Rachel said nothing. Where? Jordan moved between them as far as his cuffs allowed. Don't touch hair. Harlan spun toward him. You think you're controlling this? No. Jordan looked around at the witnesses. You lost control when you decided evidence was something you could destroy. Harlan shoved him backward. Then he turned toward the Rolls-Royce. Fine. He pointed at the vehicle. Strip it. Mercer stared at him. Harlan? Every panel, every compartment, everything. You heard what Monroe said. I don't care. Jordan's voice dropped. You should. Harlan ignored him. Officers began pulling apart the interior. Leather panels were torn loose. Storage compartments were emptied. A console cover cracked under a pry bar. One officer stopped. Captain, this isn't a search anymore. Harlan seized the tool from him. Then I'll do it myself. He slammed it into the dashboard. Crack. Julian watched without moving. Another strike. Crack. The crowd shouted. Jordan's fists tightened behind his back. Harlan turned toward him. There. Still want to tell me about procedure? Jordan looked at the ruined electronics. You're destroying protected material. Harlan laughed. Protected by who? Jordan remained silent. Harlan struck the center console again. Who? Nothing. Harlan pointed toward the vehicle. Take away the expensive suits and the $1 million car, and you're just two men who thought they could walk into my city and challenge me. Julian finally spoke. That is what you still don't understand. Harlan faced him. This was never your city. Harlan smashed the windshield with the metal tool. Glass fractured outward. The crowd erupted. Jordan took a sharp breath. They had reached the moment he had feared and needed. Harlan had crossed from questionable conduct into deliberate destruction after repeated warnings. He was creating the connection Jordan's investigation had lacked. Mercer approached him urgently. We need to write this carefully. Jordan heard him. Harlan lowered his voice. Resistance, probable cause, possible evidence, destruction by the suspects. Mercer stared at him. They didn't destroy anything. Then the report says they tried. Rachel heard it too. So did the camera in a spectator's hand 6 feet away. Jordan looked toward Julian. There was no need to speak. The conspiracy was now recording itself. Harlan walked toward the rear quarter of the Rolls-Royce. Tow company can take whatever is left. Jordan checked the slim watch beneath his cuff. A new message appeared. Secondary site secured. Convoy en route. Jordan looked at Julian. Julian noticed the change in his expression. How long? Jordan calculated silently. Minute. Harlan overheard. Minutes until what? Neither answered. Harlan walked closer. You expecting somebody? Jordan looked at him. Yes. That answer unsettled Harlan. He tried to hide it with another laugh. Nobody's coming to save you. Jordan's expression remained perfectly calm. This isn't about saving us. Harlan frowned. Jordan continued. It's about everyone you thought nobody would believe. The distant sound of engines rolled through the rain. Mercer turned toward the highway. Harlan did too. At first, there was only darkness. Then headlights appeared. Tvo, four, 8. More followed. Black SUVs moved through the intersection in a disciplined line. Harlan grabbed his radio. Dispatch, identify those vehicles. Static. Then the dispatcher answered, sounding unusually tense. Captain, we've been ordered to clear the frequency. Ordered by who? No response. The convoy drew closer. Rachel looked toward Jordan. Jordan slowly straightened despite the handcuffs. Harlan stared at the approaching vehicles. For the first time all night, nobody in the crowd was looking at the destroyed Rolls-Royce. Every eye was on the road. The first SUV turned toward them. Then the second. Then another. And another. Harlan's hand tightened around his radio. What the hell is this? Jordan looked at his twin brother. Julian calmly checked his watch. Right on time. The first SUV stopped directly behind Harlan's cruiser. Its doors opened, and the men who stepped out were not Belridge police. The first black SUV stopped behind Captain Travis Harlan's cruiser. Then another stopped beside it. Within seconds, the roadside was filled with vehicles. Doors opened almost simultaneously. Men and women in dark jackets stepped into the rain. Harlan immediately raised his hand. Stop right there. Nobody stopped. This is an active Belridge police investigation. Still, they kept moving. Several spread around the destroyed Rolls-Royce while others secured the road. Harlan grabbed his radio. I want these people identified. No answer came. Sergeant Dean Mercer moved closer to him. Harlan. What? I think we already know. Harlan refused to look at him. A tall man in his 50s emerged from the lead SUV. His name was Special Agent Marcus Hale. He surveyed the scene once. The broken windshield, the torn interior, the scattered documents. Jordan Cross standing in handcuffs. His expression hardened. Hale walked directly toward Jordan. Harlan blocked him. You need to identify yourself. Hale produced credentials briefly. Harlan barely looked. I don't care what agency you're with. You're entering my scene without authorization. Hale stared at him. Move. Harlan blinked. This is my jurisdiction. Not anymore. The words landed harder than a shout. Harlan glanced around. More federal personnel were already photographing the Rolls-Royce. One placed evidence markers near the shattered electronic equipment. Another began collecting the documents Harlan's officers had removed from the locked case. "Tell your people to back away!" Harlan shouted. Nobody obeyed. Hale walked past him. He stopped in front of Jordan. "Sir." Jordan turned slightly, presenting his cuffed wrists. Hale's jaw tightened. "Who did this?" Jordan glanced toward Harlan. "Captain Harlan." Hale removed a key from an evidence officer. Click. The first cuff opened. Then the second. Jordan rubbed his wrists. Harlan stepped forward. "You cannot release my suspect." Hale looked at him. "Your suspect?" "Yes." "What is he charged with?" Harlan hesitated. "Obstruction. Possible involvement in financial crimes. We discovered concealed equipment." Jordan looked at Hale. "Status?" Hale immediately answered. 3 locations secured. 7 subjects detained. Financial servers recovered intact. Warrants executed at all secondary sites. Harlan's face changed. Jordan nodded. "The primary accounts? Frozen 23 minutes ago. Auction records? Recovered." Mercer slowly backed away. Harlan stared between the two men. "What are you talking about?" Nobody answered him. Jordan walked toward the Rolls-Royce. He crouched beside the damaged electronic module. Hale followed. "How bad?" "Primary recorder is destroyed." Hale looked toward Harlan. Jordan picked up a fragment. "Backup transmission should have completed before impact." "It did." Jordan exhaled. Harlan approached. "What transmission?" Jordan stood. "The one your officers repeatedly warned you not to interfere with." Harlan's mouth tightened. "That device was concealed inside a vehicle involved in an investigation." Jordan looked at him. "No, Captain. The vehicle was involved in an investigation." "Silence." Harlan stared at him. Jordan continued. "For months." Mercer whispered, "Oh, God." Harlan turned. "Shut up." Jordan looked toward the destroyed Rolls-Royce. The car carried secured equipment documenting transactions connected to illegally seized property moving through private intermediaries. Harlan said nothing. "Vehicles." Jordan stepped closer. "Cash." Another step. "Businesses." Harlan's confidence disappeared. "And auctions," Jordan finished, "including auctions connected to people inside Belridge law enforcement." Harlan looked toward Mercer. Mercer looked away. Harlan shook his head. "You're lying." Jordan almost seemed disappointed. "You had countless opportunities tonight to verify information before acting." Harlan pointed toward the damaged vehicle. "You set us up." "No." Jordan's voice remained calm. "You stopped us." That distinction silenced everyone. "We did not plan this encounter. You chose the stop. You chose to ignore the registration. You chose the search. You chose the handcuffs." Jordan looked toward the shattered windshield. "And you chose that." Rachel Monroe stepped through the crowd. Harlan saw her. "You're suspended." Rachel ignored him. She approached Hale. "I have something you need." She held out her phone. Harlan's face drained. "Monroe." Rachel did not look at him. "My body camera was ordered off. I restarted it and preserved an external copy before Captain Harlan confiscated the device." Hale took the phone. "How much did you capture?" Rachel looked directly at Harlan. "Enough." Harlan stepped toward her. 2 federal personnel immediately moved between them. "Get out of my way." Hale turned. "Captain Harlan, remain where you are." Harlan froze. It was the first order that night he could not intimidate someone into ignoring. Rachel continued. "The recording includes the search after registration was confirmed, destruction of equipment, threats against witnesses." She paused. "And a conversation about changing the report." Mercer's face turned pale. Harlan stared at him. "You said that where she could hear?" Mercer's eyes widened. "You said it." Their alliance began collapsing instantly. Jordan watched without satisfaction. "Only confirmation." The system protected itself until fear made everyone protect themselves. Harlan pointed at Jordan. "This was your plan. You wanted us to make mistakes." Jordan shook his head. "I wanted you not to." Harlan had no answer. Hale received a message through his earpiece. He looked toward Jordan. "Final site secured." Jordan nodded. "Preserve this entire road as an evidence scene." Harlan laughed nervously. "You don't have authority to give that order." Hale looked at him almost incredulously. Jordan stepped closer. "Captain, you've spent the entire evening asking who I am." Harlan stared at him. Jordan continued. "You'll have your answer soon enough." Then, another SUV door opened. 2 senior officials stepped out. Unlike everyone else, they did not approach Jordan first. They walked directly toward Julian Cross. Julian had remained silent beside the destroyed Rolls-Royce. One official stopped before him. His posture changed immediately. Formal. Respectful. Harlan noticed. So did Mercer. So did Rachel. The official addressed Julian quietly. Director Cross. Harlan's face went completely blank. Jordan watched him. The reveal had begun. But the full truth was still one sentence away. Director Cross. The two words seemed to silence the entire street. Captain Travis Harlan stared at Julian Cross. Rain ran down his face, but he did not move. Director? He finally whispered. The senior official standing before Julian answered. Director Julian Cross. Harlan's eyes widened. The official continued. Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For the first time that night, Travis Harlan had absolutely nothing to say. Sergeant Dean Mercer slowly lowered his head. Rachel Monroe stared at Julian, then at Jordan. Even the crowd fell silent. Harlan looked at the destroyed Rolls-Royce, then at Julian, then back at the vehicle. No. His voice sounded almost childlike. That's impossible. Julian calmly adjusted his rain-soaked jacket. Why? Harlan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jordan stepped beside his brother. Harlan pointed at him. And him? Special Agent Marcus Hale answered. Jordan Cross oversees the federal task force investigating the Bell Ridge Asset Seizure Network. Mercer stumbled backward. Jordan's expression did not change. For 7 months, his team had followed shell companies, altered records, suspicious auctions, and citizens whose property disappeared despite never being convicted of crimes. Tonight, those separate threads had finally tightened around the same men. Harlan looked toward Julian. His voice suddenly softened. Director Cross, if I had known. Julian raised one hand. Harlan stopped. Julian looked at him for several seconds. That sentence is the problem. Harlan swallowed. Sir, this was a misunderstanding. No. Julian glanced toward the elderly Mr. Reed standing among the witnesses. Was his son a misunderstanding? Harlan said nothing. Julian looked toward Rachel. Was threatening Officer Monroe a misunderstanding? Still nothing. Then Julian pointed toward the destroyed Rolls-Royce. Was that? Harlan's breathing became heavier. You have to understand what this looked like. Julian's expression hardened. What did it look like? Harlan hesitated. Julian stepped closer. 2 black men driving an expensive car? Nobody moved. You checked the registration. It was valid. You checked the VIN. It was clean. You found no warrant. Julian's voice remained quiet. And you continued. Harlan looked down. Julian shook his head. The problem isn't that you failed to recognize the FBI director. Harlan slowly raised his eyes. The problem is that you believed the person standing in front of you needed to be the FBI director before you owed him dignity. A murmur moved through the crowd. Jordan turned toward Hale. Proceed. Federal personnel moved immediately. Evidence containers appeared. The damaged electronics were photographed. The opened case was secured. Every fragment Harlan had treated like garbage was now carefully catalogued. Jordan addressed Mercer. Sergeant Dean Mercer. Mercer stiffened. We have records connecting 2 asset auction companies to accounts controlled through members of your family. Mercer's face collapsed. I didn't run those companies. I didn't say you did. Mercer looked toward Harlan. Harlan stared back. Jordan continued. We also recovered internal messages discussing which seizures should bypass normal review. That was Harlan. Harlan spun toward him. You liar. Mercer pointed at him. You approved everything. Harlan lunged forward. 2 agents immediately restrained him. Get off me. Jordan watched the alliance disintegrate. Harlan struggled. This is ridiculous. He's trying to save himself. Jordan nodded. Yes. Harlan stopped. And that is why we rely on evidence. Rachel approached with Hale. Her preserved recording had already been transferred. Hale looked at Jordan. It captured the conversation about changing the report. Jordan nodded. And the destruction? Most of it. Harlan stared at Rachel. You betrayed your department. Rachel's eyes filled with anger. No. She stepped closer. I refuse to betray the badge. Harlan looked away. Jordan turned toward the crowd. Mr. Reed. The elderly man hesitated before stepping forward. Jordan faced him. Your son's case will be reviewed. Mr. Reed's eyes glistened. You mean his truck? Everything. Another woman raised her hand. They took money from my husband. Jordan nodded toward an investigator. Get her information. Then another voice came. My brother lost his van. Another. They seized my daughter's car. The complaints spread through the crowd, one after another. Harlan listened as people he had dismissed for years finally spoke where someone could not silence them. Jordan looked at him. This investigation started with 3 complaints. He paused. Tonight we have dozens. Harlan's shoulders sagged. Hale stepped forward. Travis Harlan. Harlan looked up. You are being taken into custody, pursuant to federal warrants connected to conspiracy, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and offenses arising from the Bell Ridge asset seizure investigation. Harlan stared at Julian. Director, please. Julian did not move. I served this city for 24 years. Julian's face showed no satisfaction. Then you had 24 years to understand what that badge required. Harlan's voice cracked. One mistake shouldn't erase my entire career. Julian looked toward the shattered Rolls-Royce. This isn't about one car. Then toward Mr. Reed, one family. Then Rachel, one officer. Finally, he looked back at Harlan. It's about what you repeatedly chose to do when you believed the people in front of you had less power than you. Harlan lowered his head. Hale turned him around. The handcuffs closed. Click. The same sound Jordan had heard earlier. Only now, it followed evidence, warrants, and an actual charge. Mercer was taken into custody moments later. Several officers were separated for questioning. Others voluntarily handed over phones and records. Rachel stood beside Jordan, watching Harlan being escorted toward an SUV. I thought nobody would believe me, she said. Jordan looked at her. That's what systems like this depend on. She glanced toward his wrists, still marked red from the cuffs. Why didn't you tell him who you were? Jordan looked toward Julian. His brother answered instead. Because the law shouldn't change after someone learns your title. Harlan reached the SUV. Before entering, he turned toward the twins one final time. Behind them sat the wrecked $1.5 million Rolls-Royce, its windshield shattered and interior torn apart. Hours earlier, Harlan had viewed it as proof that two black men did not belong. Now it represented something entirely different. Evidence, not merely of destroyed property, but of what unchecked power could become when nobody expected accountability to arrive. Julian looked at the ruined car. Jordan joined him. That's going to be expensive, Julian said quietly. Jordan almost smiled. The car can be replaced. His eyes moved toward the citizens giving statements in the rain. Julian followed his gaze. Both brothers understood what could not be repaired nearly as easily. Trust. And Belridge was only beginning to learn how much of it had been destroyed. 4 months later, Belridge looked almost exactly the same. The same streets, the same storefronts, the same courthouse clock overlooking downtown. But beneath the familiar surface, something fundamental had changed. The investigation that began long before Jordan Cross was stopped had expanded dramatically after that rainy night. Federal investigators reviewed years of property seizures. They found vehicles taken from people who were never charged, cash confiscated during traffic stops without criminal convictions, work trucks sold through questionable auctions, property transferred through companies connected to officials and their relatives. 31 suspicious cases became 47, then 63. Families who had spent years believing nobody cared suddenly received phone calls telling them their cases were being reopened. Marcus Reed was among them. His father stood beside him when officials returned the money recovered from the sale of his landscaping truck. The original vehicle had already been sold years earlier, but the compensation allowed Marcus to buy another. The first morning he restarted his landscaping business, his father sat in the passenger seat. Neither man spoke for several minutes. Then the old man touched the dashboard. They finally believed us. Marcus shook his head. No, Dad. He looked through the windshield. They finally had to listen. Captain Travis Harlan no longer wore a badge. Neither did Dean Mercer. The criminal proceedings against them continued, supported not by Julian Cross's position, but by financial records, messages, witness statements, preserved recordings, and evidence collected through Jordan's investigation. That distinction mattered deeply to Julian. He refused every suggestion that the case should be presented publicly as revenge for what happened to him and his brother. This cannot become the story of two powerful men who received justice, he told officials. It has to become the story of everyone who deserved justice before we arrived. Belridge established independent review procedures for major property seizures. Old cases were reopened. Several officers were cleared of wrongdoing. Others faced disciplinary investigations. And for the first time in years, complaints against senior officers could be reviewed outside their direct chain of command. Rachel Monroe returned to work after an independent review concluded that her suspension had been retaliatory. When reporters called her a hero, she rejected the word. I was scared, she admitted. I just finally decided being scared wasn't a good enough reason to stay silent. One Saturday afternoon, Julian and Jordan returned to Belridge. Not in a Rolls-Royce. Jordan drove an ordinary rented sedan. Julian looked around the interior. No umbrella in the door. Jordan smiled. Dad would approve. They were heading to a community meeting held inside an old public library. There were no velvet ropes, no formal ceremony. Residents filled folding chairs while Julian and Jordan sat among them. Mr. Reed was there. So was Marcus. Rachel stood near the back. For nearly 2 hours, residents talked. Some were angry. Some cried. Others simply wanted someone to acknowledge what had happened. Julian listened. Near the end, An older woman raised her hand. Director Cross? Julian turned. I've wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. She hesitated. Why didn't you tell Captain Harlan who you were? The room became quiet. Julian looked toward Jordan. Then he answered, because it shouldn't have mattered. The woman frowned slightly. Julian continued, if I had shown him my position immediately and he had suddenly treated me respectfully, what would that have proven? Nobody answered. That he respected me? Julian shook his head. No, it would only prove that he respected power. Jordan watched his brother carefully. Julian looked across the room. Every person stopped on a road should receive the same basic dignity, whether they are a federal director, a mechanic, a teacher, a waitress, or someone between jobs. Mr. Reed lowered his eyes. Julian continued, the most troubling part of that night wasn't what happened after people learned who we were. He paused. It was what happened before. The room remained silent. Jordan finally spoke. Our positions gave us resources many victims never had. He looked toward Marcus Reed. Marcus didn't have a convoy coming. Then toward another family. They didn't have investigators already watching. Jordan looked around the room. That's why this cannot end with Harlan. Rachel nodded. It has to change what comes after him. Exactly. Weeks later, Julian and Jordan returned to Oak Haven Memorial Cemetery. Autumn had begun painting the trees orange and gold. They walked toward Samuel Cross's grave, carrying no cameras and accompanied by no security detail close enough to disturb the quiet. Jordan placed fresh flowers beside the headstone. For a moment, neither brother spoke. Finally, Jordan smiled. Dad definitely would have complained about the car. Julian laughed softly. Every single day. Jordan looked at him. Insurance finally settled it. And total loss. Julian raised an eyebrow. $1.5 million. Gone. Julian looked toward their father's headstone. The car can be replaced. Jordan nodded. They stood silently. Then Julian said, trust is harder. Jordan's expression became serious. Yes. A cold breeze moved through the trees. Julian remembered their father standing beneath an old city bus decades earlier, grease covering his hands as he explained something two teenage boys had not fully understood. Power doesn't make a man important. It reveals what kind of man he already was. Harlan had possessed power. Rachel had possessed far less. Yet when the moment came, Rachel risked what she had to protect strangers. That was the difference. Not rank, not money, not authority, character. Jordan placed one hand against the headstone. We remembered, Dad. The brothers turned and walked back toward the parking lot. Belridge would not transform overnight. No city did. No institution did, but dozens of families had finally been heard. Property had been returned. Records had been corrected. People who abused authority were being held accountable. And officers who chose integrity had learned they were not alone. The destroyed Rolls-Royce eventually disappeared into an evidence warehouse. Its shattered windshield and torn interior no longer represented wealth. They represented a warning. Harlan had believed dignity belonged to people powerful enough to demand it. He discovered too late that dignity was never his to give. And justice mattered most, not when it protected the powerful man whose title everyone recognized, but when it protected the ordinary person whose name meant nothing to anyone in the room. Never measure someone's worth by their clothes, their car, their job, or the power you think they possess. True character appears in how we treat people when we believe they can do nothing for us. Justice means little if it only protects the powerful. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about dignity, courage, and justice.